Tonight, dear adventurers, we return to a quieter world, a place where the noise of life softens into gentle echoes, and the promise of magic floats just beyond the edge of thought. I, Sleep Music, welcome you back to our warm little haven. Not long ago, I discovered a remarkable archive of fully translated Grimm folktales stories. Mysterious, enchanting, and at times dark enough to make even the bravest wanderer shiver. From familiar legends like Snow White and Little Red Cap, to hidden treasures such as the 12 Huntsmen and the Old Woman in the Woods, these tales have shaped countless modern stories we know today. As you listen, you may find yourself recognizing echoes of contemporary adventures, sprinkled like breadcrumbs along a forest path. But before our journey begins, let us settle. Find a place where your body can loosen and your mind drift freely. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and allow the heaviness of the day to melt away. Your arms, your shoulders, your legs, everything grows light, as if the world itself has lifted its weight from you. Now that we have found stillness, we travel back to late 18th century Germany, to a modest town called Hanau. It was here that Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm were born, two brothers who, amid political upheaval and changing times, found refuge in the folk tales whispered by neighbors, family, and travelers. These stories were not merely entertainment, they were threads of cultural memory, fragile and in danger of fading forever. Determined to preserve them, the Grimm brothers journeyed village to village, listening, recording, and safeguarding each tale with extraordinary care. Their great collection, Kinder- und Hausmärchen, published in 1812, began with a modest number of tales but grew to include more than 200. Reception, as one might expect, was divided. Some praised the brothers for rescuing the nation's folklore. Others balked at the darkness within the stories, those grim shadows that linger even now. And yet, the tales spread across Europe, carried by readers who recognized themselves in the timeless struggles between good and evil, courage and cruelty, hope and despair. Centuries later, Walt Disney reshaped these stories into films that defined childhood for millions. His versions were softer, gentler, and gleaming with song, but at their core, the timeless themes endured. And so, with history behind us and imagination ahead, our first tale begins.
The Little Lamb and the Little Fish. Once upon a time, there lived a little brother and sister who loved each other with all their hearts. Their mother had died, and they now lived with a cruel stepmother who secretly did everything she could to harm them. One day, the children were playing in a meadow near their home with other village children. A pond bordered the edge of the field, and the children ran around it joyfully, chasing one another and playing a little rhyming game as they danced in a circle. Eeny meeny, let me live, and to you my bird I'll give. The little bird will bring me straw. The straw I'll give the cow and more. The cow will give me milk so sweet. The milk the baker uses for treats. The cake I'll give the kitty small. And the cat will catch the mice for all. The mice I'll hang up in the smoke, and afterward I'll cut them up. Whoever the children pointed to at the phrase "cut them up" had to run, and all the others chased them laughing. The wicked stepmother watched from the house window, and jealousy and malice filled her heart. She knew the dark arts, and in her rage, she bewitched the two innocent children, changing the brother into a little fish that swam in the pond, and the sister into a small lamb wandering sadly in the meadow. The fish glided back and forth in sorrow, and the lamb paced the meadow without eating a single blade of grass. And so time passed, heavy, lonely, and long. One day, guests arrived unexpectedly at the castle. The stepmother seized the moment. She called the cook and ordered, "Go fetch the lamb from the meadow and slaughter it. We have nothing else fit to serve." The cook brought the little lamb into the kitchen, tied her feet, and prepared his knife. But as he was sharpening the blade, he noticed a small fish in the water gutter near the kitchen wall, swimming anxiously, looking up at him. It was the brother, following the lamb as far as he could. Then the lamb cried softly, "Oh, little brother in the lake, my sad heart is about to break." The cook prepares his knife so sharp to stab it deep into my heart. And the fish answered, "Oh, little sister up above, my heart too breaks for grief and love. For down below within this lake, My sorrow soon my heart will break. Hearing them speak, brother and sister, grieving in their bewitched forms, the cook froze. He realized these were no ordinary animals, but victims of the wicked woman in the house. "Fear not," he said softly. "I shall not kill you." He took another animal instead for the guests and secretly carried the lamb to a kind peasant woman, telling her everything. By chance, this woman had once been the wet nurse of the little sister. Immediately, she suspected who the lamb and fish truly were. She brought them to a wise woman who blessed them both, and the enchantment broke. The lamb became a girl again, and the fish became a boy. The wise woman led them to a small hut deep within the forest, where the siblings lived together in peace and happiness for the rest of their days, far from the reach of the wicked stepmother, the wolf, and the 7 little goats. There once lived an old mother goat who had 7 young kids, and she loved each of them as dearly as any mother could. One day, she needed to go into the woods for food, so she gathered them around and warned, "Children, be on your guard against the wolf. If he gets inside, he will devour you all, skin, hair, and bone. You will know him by his rough voice and his black feet." "Mother, we will be careful," said the little ones. "You may go in peace." The mother goat bleated affectionately and went on her way. Soon after, someone knocked at the door and called, "Open up, dear children. Your mother is back and has brought something for each of you." But the kids recognized the rough voice. "We won't open," they cried. "You're not our mother. She has a gentle, soft voice. You are the wolf." The wolf ran to a shopkeeper and bought a large piece of chalk. After eating it, his voice softened. He returned and knocked again. "Open up, dear children. Your mother has returned." But as he spoke, he placed one black paw on the window ledge. The kids saw it and cried, "We won't open. Mother doesn't have a black foot. You are the wolf." So the wolf ran to the baker. "I've hurt my foot," he lied. "Spread dough over it." The baker obeyed. Then the wolf went to the miller. "Dust my foot with flour so it will look white." The miller hesitated, sensing deception, but when the wolf threatened to eat him, he obeyed. Once more, the wolf knocked. "Open up, dear children. Your mother is home. Show us your foot," the kids demanded. The wolf placed his flour-covered paw in the window, and seeing that it was white, the little goats believed him. They opened the door. The wolf leapt inside. In terror, the kids scattered to find hiding places. One hid under the table, another in the bed, a third in the stove, the fourth in the kitchen, the fifth in the cupboard, the sixth under the wash basin, and the 7th in the tall clock case. But the wolf found every one of them except the youngest in the clock case and swallowed them whole. Satisfied, he waddled to a meadow, lay under a tree, and fell asleep. Soon after, the mother goat returned. Seeing the destruction, the overturned furniture, the scattered bedding, her heart pounded. She called her children one by one, but none answered until at last a tiny voice cried, "Mother, I am in the clock case." She freed the youngest goat, who told her everything. Weeping in grief, the mother goat searched for the wolf. In the meadow, she found him asleep, his belly swollen and moving strangely. Could her children still be alive? She sent the youngest home for scissors and thread. With trembling hands, she cut open the wolf's belly, and out jumped all 6 kids, alive, unharmed. The greedy wolf had swallowed them whole. Overjoyed, the mother embraced them. Then she said, "Bring me heavy stones. We will fill his stomach while he sleeps." They filled the wolf's belly with stones, and she stitched it up. The wolf woke, heavy with thirst, and walked to a well. But when he leaned forward, the stones pulled him in, and he drowned. The 7 little goats gathered around the well, dancing with joy. "The wolf is dead! The wolf is dead!" Hand in hoof, they celebrated with their mother, the peasant, and the devil. There once lived a clever peasant, so shrewd, in fact, that many stories were told of how he outwitted anyone who tried to trick him. But the tale people most admired was how he once deceived the devil himself. One evening, as the peasant was finishing his work in the fields and preparing to go home, he noticed something strange. In the middle of his land burned a pile of glowing coals. Curious and startled, he approached. There, sitting atop the burning embers as comfortably as if it were a cushioned chair, sat a small black devil. "You must be sitting on a treasure," said the peasant. "Indeed I am," replied the devil proudly. "More gold and silver than you've ever seen in your life." "That treasure is on my land," said the peasant, "so it belongs to me." "It shall be yours," said the devil, "if you agree to give me half of whatever your field produces for the next 2 years. I have plenty of money, but I crave the fruits of the earth." The peasant agreed, but with one clever condition. To avoid dispute, he said, "Everything that grows above the ground shall be yours, and everything beneath it shall be mine." The devil agreed eagerly, but the crafty peasant sowed nothing but turnips. When harvest time came, the devil arrived to collect his share, but found nothing but dried leaves, while the peasant dug up his fat turnips, all safely beneath the soil. "You tricked me this time," the devil snarled. "But it won't happen again. Next year, I will take what grows underground, and you will take what grows above." "Agreed," said the peasant calmly. But the next year, the peasant planted wheat. When the stalks ripened, he harvested everything above the ground, leaving behind the worthless stubble and roots. The devil arrived and found nothing but dry, useless stems sticking out of the soil. Enraged, he vanished into a deep cleft in the rocks with a roar. "That," said the peasant, shouldering his golden treasure, "is how one must deal with a fox." The 12 Apostles. Rewritten. 300 years before the birth of Christ, there lived a poor mother with 12 sons. Her poverty was so great that she feared she could not keep them alive. Day after day, she prayed that God would allow her sons to live long enough to see the promised Savior. But her need grew so desperate that she eventually sent them out one by one to search for food. The oldest son, Peter, walked a full day until he came to a vast forest. He wandered deeper and deeper, unable to find a path out. Hunger weakened him until he collapsed on the ground, believing death was near. Suddenly, a small, radiant boy appeared, beautiful as an angel. He clapped his hands, and Peter looked up. "Why do you sit here so sorrowfully?" the boy asked. Peter answered, "I am wandering the world seeking something to eat, so that I may live to see the promised Savior. It is my greatest wish." "Come with me," said the shining child. "Your wish shall be fulfilled." He took Peter's hand and led him through narrow cliffs into a glittering cave filled with gold, silver, and crystal. In the center stood 12 cradles, all in a row. "Lie down in the first cradle," said the little angel. "I will rock you to sleep." Peter obeyed. The angel sang softly and rocked the cradle until he slept. As he slept, his second brother arrived, led by his own guardian angel, and was placed in the second cradle. Then came the third, and so on. One by one, all 12 brothers were rocked into enchanted sleep. They slept for 300 years, until the night the Savior of the world was born. Then they awoke and came forth onto the earth. People knew them as the 12 Apostles, the gifts of the little folk. Rewritten, a tailor and a goldsmith were traveling together one evening just as the sun dipped behind the mountains. Suddenly they heard distant music, strange yet sweet, and followed it eagerly. By the time the moon rose, they reached a hill where a large circle of tiny men and women danced hand in hand. Their songs were joyous, their movements bright with childlike delight. At the center sat an old man, slightly taller than the others, wearing a colorful jacket and a long ice-gray beard. The travelers stood amazed, but the old man beckoned them to join. The little folk opened their circle gladly. The goldsmith, bold and hunchbacked, stepped forward at once. The tailor hesitated but soon joined as well, swept up by the merriment. The dance whirled and spun. Suddenly the old man drew a broad knife from his belt. The travelers grew fearful. But the old man simply shaved the goldsmith's beard and hair swiftly and cleanly, then did the same to the tailor. He smiled kindly, patting their shoulders as if rewarding them for their courage. Then he pointed to a heap of coal nearby, motioning for them to fill their pockets. Puzzled but obedient, they did so. They left the hill to sleep in a barn, too tired to empty their pockets. At dawn, a heavy weight awakened them. To their astonishment, the coal had turned to pure gold. Even more strangely, their hair and beards had grown back perfectly overnight. The greedy goldsmith had taken more coal and therefore had far more gold. But greed, as always, demands more. He insisted they return to the hill the next night. The tailor wished only to go home and live a peaceful life, but he eventually agreed. That night, the goldsmith hung extra pockets on his coat and returned alone. The little folk danced again, and the old man shaved him a second time. He filled every pocket to bursting with coal. But when he slept and woke the next morning, every piece of coal remained coal. His gold from the night before had also turned back into coal. And worse, his bald head was smooth as glass, and a second hump had grown on his chest. The greedy goldsmith wept bitterly, and the tailor, kind-hearted as always, consoled him. "You traveled with me," he said. "Stay with me and share what I have." And so the goldsmith lived in his friend's home, bearing his two humps and covering his bald head with a cap for the rest of his days, a reminder of the price of greed. The shepherd boy, far and wide across the land, lived a shepherd boy whose fame had grown great, for he was known to answer any question with remarkable wisdom. Even the king heard tales of the boy's cleverness, though he doubted their truth. So he summoned the boy to his court. "If you can answer 3 questions I will ask," said the king. "I will adopt you as my own child, and you shall live with me in my royal palace." The boy bowed and replied, "What are your 3 questions, your majesty?" The king said, "First, how many drops of water are in the ocean?" The shepherd boy answered calmly, "Great king, if you will command that all rivers on earth be dammed, so that not a single drop flows into the sea until I have counted them, then I will tell you how many drops it holds." The king nodded in surprise. The second question, "How many stars are in the sky?" "Give me a large sheet of white paper," said the boy. When the paper was brought, he dotted it with so many fine points, so tiny and countless, that no one could look upon it without their eyes growing weary. "There are as many stars in the heavens," he said, "as the points upon this paper. Count them if you can." No one could. The king continued. The third question, "How many seconds are in eternity?" The boy answered, "In Lower Pomerania stands the Diamond Mountain, 2 miles high, 2 miles wide, and 2 miles deep. Every 100 years, a tiny bird comes to sharpen its beak upon the mountain's side. When the entire mountain has been worn away by this bird, then the first second of eternity will have passed." The king sat astonished. "You have answered all 3 questions like a wise man," he said. "From this day forth you shall dwell with me and be as my own son." The old woman in the woods, a poor servant girl, once traveled through a great forest with her master and mistress when a band of robbers suddenly attacked. They murdered everyone in the carriage, everyone except the girl, who leaped out in terror and hid behind a tree. When the robbers had taken their spoils and vanished, the girl crawled out, trembling as she beheld the grisly scene. She cried bitterly, "What will become of me? I know not the way out of the forest. No human lives here. Surely I will starve." She wandered the woods, searching for a path, but none appeared. When night fell, she sat under a tree, commended herself to God, and resolved to remain there, come what may. After some time, a small white dove flew toward her with a tiny golden key in its beak. Dropping it into her hand, it said, "Do you see that great tree there? A small lock is set into it. Open it with the key, and you will find food enough to still your hunger." She opened the tree and found a bowl of milk and white bread, which she dipped and ate. When she had finished, she said softly, "It is the hour when the hens at home go to roost. I am weary and long for a bed." The dove fluttered back with another golden key. "Open that tree over there, and you will find a bed." Inside was a beautiful white bed, where she prayed for protection and fell asleep. In the morning, the dove returned with a third key. "Inside that tree you will find clothing. The garments were splendid, trimmed with gold and jewels finer than those of any princess." Thus she lived for some time, cared for by the little dove, who brought her everything she needed. One day the dove said, "Will you do me a kindness?" "Gladly," she replied. The dove continued, "I will lead you to a little house. Inside sits an old woman by the fire. She will speak to you. Do not answer her. Walk past her on the right side and open the door you find there. Inside lies a table filled with rings, some plain, some encrusted with jewels. Touch none but the simple ring. Bring it to me." The girl obeyed. When she entered the house, the old woman glared at her. "Good day, child." She ignored her and went straight toward the inner door. The old woman seized her skirt. "No one enters my house without my leave." The girl pulled away silently and entered the ring chamber. Rings of every kind glittered before her eyes, but the simple one was nowhere to be found. Just then she saw the old woman sneaking away with a bird cage. She took it from her, lifted it, and found inside a small bird holding the plain ring in its beak. She took the ring and fled the house, but the dove did not come. She leaned against a tree to wait. Slowly the trunk softened, curved, lowered its branches, and wrapped around her like arms. The tree transformed into a handsome young man who embraced her. "You have freed me," he said. "The old woman is an evil witch. She turned me into a tree, and for a few hours each day into a white dove. As long as she possessed the ring, I could not regain my form." At his words, the trees nearby changed too, becoming his servants and his horses, all freed from enchantment. He took the girl to his kingdom, where he was a prince, and they were married and lived happily. The goose girl at the well, far up in the mountains, in a lonely clearing surrounded by great forests, lived a very old woman with her flock of geese. Each morning she walked with her crutch into the woods, and though she seemed frail, she moved with remarkable strength, gathering grass for her geese and collecting wild fruit. Villagers met her rarely, but when they did, some whispered, "Beware of the old woman. She has claws beneath her gloves. She must be a witch." One bright morning, a noble young count walked through the forest, sun high, birds singing, breeze soft. Suddenly he saw the old woman kneeling, cutting grass. Beside her were 2 baskets full of apples and pears. He approached. "Good mother, how will you carry all this?" "I must carry it," she replied. "Rich folks, children do not need such work, but we peasants must take our burdens on our backs. Let me help you," he said generously. "You may try," she said. "My house is behind the hill, only an hour's walk." But as soon as the old woman packed the heavy bundle on his back and hung the baskets on his arms, the count staggered. The weight felt like stones. Still, she urged him forward with mocking words, refusing to release him from the task. When he tried to set the load down, he found he couldn't. The bundle clung to him as if grown onto his back. The old woman laughed, then suddenly leapt onto the bundle and perched atop it, heavier than any woman he had ever carried. With switch and nettles, she struck his legs whenever he slowed. Groaning, sweating, stumbling, he carried her uphill until they reached her cottage. There she finally climbed down and removed the burden. Her daughter, a large, strong, but terribly ugly girl, came to greet her. The old woman praised the count for carrying her, but the count found the daughter's appearance dreadful. The old woman set him on a bench beneath an apple tree. "You have earned your wages," she said kindly. Then she handed him a small box carved from a single emerald. "Guard this well, for it will bring you good fortune." When the count stood, He found himself fully restored, light, strong, and free from fatigue. He thanked her and left. After wandering 3 days through wilderness, he reached a large town. He presented the emerald box at the royal palace. But when the queen opened it and found inside a pearl exactly like the tears once shed by her lost daughter, she fainted. When revived, she tearfully told the count the story. Her youngest daughter, more beautiful than daybreak, had once angered the king by saying she loved him as salt. In his rage, the king banished her into the forest with only a sack of salt. Regret soon struck him, but it was too late. She had vanished. The queen believed the pearl in the box was one of her daughter's tears. The count told his tale of the strange old woman in the woods. The king and queen resolved to seek her out, hoping for news of their child. They journeyed to the forest and at dusk reached the cottage. The old woman sat spinning, the geese quiet around her. She greeted them. "You drove away your child 3 years ago. No harm has come to her. She has tended the geese. Her heart is pure." Then she called, "Come out, my little daughter." And the princess stepped forth, golden hair shining, silken gown flowing, eyes bright as stars. She fell into the arms of her parents, and all wept with joy. When she saw the young count, her face bloomed red like a rose, though she did not yet understand why. "What shall I give you, my child?" asked the king. "She needs nothing," said the old woman. "I give her the pearls she shed in sorrow. They are worth more than your kingdom, and I give her my little house." At her words, the old woman vanished. The cottage walls trembled and transformed, becoming a splendid palace. Servants appeared, laying a royal feast. The tale, they say, goes further still, but my grandmother had forgotten the rest. Yet I believe the beautiful princess married the count, and they lived happily in the palace for as long as God willed it.